Hello and welcome to Shape the System, where we find and tell the stories that help people to rethink the way the world works. We interview people from all over the world who are helping to change our systems for the better. Shape the System is an independent podcast with support from KPMG High Growth Ventures, who help ambitious founders and their teams scale up for success. More about KPMG High Growth Ventures after the interview. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hi everyone, it's Vincent Turner. Welcome to Shape the System podcast. Julia and Jordy Kay today. Hi guys.
Hey.
Hey. Thanks
welcome to the show. Now let's just jump straight in. You guys are doing some fascinating stuff across the board. Today we're going to talk a lot about Great Wrap though. So why don't we just start straight with what is Great Wrap and what is the problem space that you guys are playing in there?
Yeah, so Great Wrap launched with the world's first certified and compostable pallet wrap in March 2020.
Yep.
The world's worst time to launch a B2B product, essentially. So much of what we were relying on was really food and beverage.
Hospitality, food and beverage.
Exactly, and freight. And
right.
So that was essentially the start of Great Wrap.
Okay.
And yeah, we make stretch wrap made from biopolymers.
Okay, so there was three words you just used there: certified, compostable, and pallet wrap specifically. Let's break all of those down. So compostable, obviously, there was a difference. There was a compostable, and there's another word people use interchangeably, but they're different things. So let's just understand that paradigm firstly.
Yeah, definitely. It's super confusing, really, isn't it? Because there's just so many eco-sustainable bio terminology in packaging, and no clear sets of guidelines for it. It's a lot of sort of reading on the internet and whatnot. But
sure.
Yeah, so we offer a compostable product.
And what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, exactly. So it breaks down in a compost pile, and we're certified compostable. So that means that it breaks down in under 180 days. We're certified home and garden compostable, which means the temperature in which it composts is at 30 degrees or less.
Right.
And breaks down in that 180 day time frame.
Got it.
Leaving behind no sort of toxins or anything nasty in the compost pile. So
and not even a residue, or is there like a?
It's carbon and water is essentially what you're left with.
Right. Okay.
And so it just sort of adds value to your compost pile.
Got it. Yeah. And then pallet wrap was the third thing there. Like if you go to the Great Wrap website, which is greatwrap.co, it shows like Glad Wrap or Cling Wrap for our American listeners. There's probably other brand names. Is there a generic name for this category, by the way?
Saran wrap.
Saran wrap, I think, is
Saran wrap, but that's a brand too, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's like Band-Aid, Saran wrap, Glad wrap. We make Cling Wrap and we make pallet wrap for wrapping pallets, but the broader term is stretch wrap. Right.
Okay. Cool. So we've got an umbrella category of stretch wrap, and we've got a bunch of different ones of pallet wrap, and then for your home, basically, and then the brands sort of sit under that. I guess the thing I'm curious about with pallet wrap is there a distinction from the product perspective? Like, is it in some way other than a bigger? Is it doing something differently, or is it a different dimension in terms of the thickness or something? What's different about the pallet part?
Yeah, I think it's like almost double the thickness of a home cling wrap, and it's about strength. So if you're wrapping a pallet to go on the back of a truck, it's about everything being able to stay tight and held together. So there's a few sort of tensile properties there that are a bit different.
Yeah, which is sort of made up for in the formula as well. So it's not only the way we make it, but currently we've stopped actually manufacturing this pallet wrap, but the original pallet wrap contained more oils, still fossil fuel-based oils, which is something we've sort of sought to change, and we've got a 100% plant-based pallet wrap coming out soon. But it contained more oils, thus giving it more sort of strength than cling wrap, which, wrapping food doesn't require huge amounts of strength.
Tensile strength, unless like there's some like beef, massive pork side or something. And trying to hang from the ceiling. You got to make an escape out of a third floor apartment window or something using only Glad Wrap or Cling Wrap. The pallet thing's still interesting for me because I hadn't, when I sort of looked at the site and thought about the product, I thought about kind of the day-to-day usage of people using in their homes. Like who typically is the consumer of pallet wrap? Like, is it organic product that's being sold and needs something to be wrapped, or is it someone putting like what's on the pallet? That's I guess my question.
Like everything is on the pallet. I think we discovered pallet wrap because Jordy was sort of sending wine around the world on a pallet, and then I would be on a construction site and see building materials arrive on a pallet wrapped in stretch wrap. But I think it sort of just transcends everything that gets moved around the world, really.
So what's happening is you've got a pallet and then people, like, instead of putting it in a box, you just put it on the thing, but it's going to fall off, so you need something to hold it onto the thing. Is that essentially the role it's playing?
Exactly.
Correct. It sort of, it sort of transcends across all industries, really. So whether you're working in construction, Julia is an architect, sending construction materials to site. In wine, when I'm receiving goods like bottles, boxes, things to make my wines, all arrives on pallets. Every piece of item of clothing that you are wearing, even if it was Patagonia, which was made in Vietnam, was still put on into boxes, wrapped around with pallet wrap on pallets and freighted across the world. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing or how sustainable it is, it still essentially has to be wrapped on a pallet wrap and freighted somewhere. So, which is incredibly problematic for all these sort of sustainable brands, which I guess is the sort of realm that we existed in within our careers. And we found that it still was this like one piece of the supply chain that hadn't been disrupted or solved. And it's
from a sustainability.
Correct. And it's just such a massive thing. Like in Australia, we use about 150,000 tonnes of stretch wrap each year. That
was going to be my next question.
Yeah. And the vast majority of that.
Sorry, how did 150,000 tonnes?
Correct.
And also, if you think about how light a piece of stretch wrap is,
that is
so much plastic.
Hold on. So if you sell a roll of this stuff for someone, like, how big is that roll? Like, is it a 20 kilo roll? Like, what? Give me a sense of the dimensions of a pallet roll.
It's 4.32 kilograms, and it's 400 meters in length. And we sell them in boxes of 4, so you get 1.2 kilometers of pallet wrap in a box of 4.
And then what's the width, like how is it kind of wrap a 2 meter pallet? What's the dimension of a pallet that it's got to go over? Is it do multiple?
Yeah, roughly sort of a pallet, sort of like 1.1 meters by 1.1 kind of thing. Like essentially a cubic meter.
Right.
You can go sort of higher and things like that, but that's sort of roughly it. One roll would last maybe sort of 20 pallets.
Right.
So yeah, we're talking with customers, like mining companies that, you know, sort of talk to us, and they're sort of looking over a warehouse with 100,000 pallets of one of their products that they mine, that's then shipped all around the world to go into making things like car batteries or whatever it is, and then they get made and then shipped to the next manufacturer where they put it into a Tesla or a Volkswagen, and that gets sent elsewhere.
This is fascinating. Like I would never have imagined. Sorry, Julie. I would never have imagined that an inorganic product would need to be wrapped for some reason. Literally just to hold the thing on the damn thing.
That's exactly right.
That's fucking amazing. Excuse my language. I've never thought about Glad wrap or plastic wrap ever in stretch wrap. I think that's our category. Never thought about this so much. This is blowing my mind. I love it.
I think that's why it's so interesting for us, because so obviously we've seen these other kind of compostable products and biopolymer-based products that have popped out on the market, like takeaway coffee cups and, I don't know, shopping bags and doggy poo bags and all these other sort of things, which are fantastic. But those are really, like, I guess, consumer-based kind of products, right? But the biggest problems that we're facing with plastic waste in the world are probably B2B plastic waste sort of management issues there. That's where, we've got 150,000 tonnes of stretch wrap, used in Australia. Maybe 10,000 tonnes of that would be cling wrap at home. It may be less, like the vast majority really is.
Vast majority is business case.
Yeah, exactly. And commercial kitchens.
And
it's also, it's not even things like it's everyday food items going to your supermarket, like it's literally everything. So
totally, yeah.
That thing where you go into, I'm not going to name a retail brand because I'll get it wrong and then I'll sue me, but you go into insert shop name here and there's a banana that's wrapped in something that's organic and compostable, to use the right language, and then it's in a container that's wrapped in a thing. You're like, really? Like, do we really need to wrap our stuff like that? That type of use case?
Yeah, it gets more and more. The deeper you get into this, it's a really dark rabbit hole.
The problem that
I was chatting to one company recently, and again, like fully nameless in all forms. And they have a series of distribution centres, like many companies across Australia. And these distribution centres in each state go through enough pallet wrap every year. This is one company in one country, Australia, using enough pallet wrap every year to circumnavigate the world. Or we Googled the distance to the moon and we realised they covered enough distance of pallet wrap to go 1/10 of the way to the moon.
Amazing. In one year. And they've obviously been in business for longer than a decade, I'm guessing.
And we're Australia, like a country of 25 million, So when you sort of think about global kind of companies or multinationals shipping all over the world and things like that with, much sort of larger scale, then, the problem is hard to comprehend.
And I'm curious, you've not specifically how you landed to be solving this problem, but more in the engineering of all the bioengineering. I don't know what the right word is here, but roughly how is the stuff made? Is it coming out of an organic waste material somewhere? Because I think that was part of the backstory here, or you've worked out a way to actually manufacture this stuff now. You don't have to give away the specialty. But I'm curious as to where is the product? Where is the input product coming from? I mean, the example I'm giving is I think about Visi, right, which makes boxes. Probably adjacent industry. I don't know whether they're good or bad in this respect, but they have a recycling division that goes and collects cardboard, and then they use those recycled cardboard to then make more boxes. And so the source of their input and their raw materials is other boxes. Roughly speaking, what are the raw materials? You talked about oil being one of the raw materials. Where's that coming from? What's the connected ecosystem, I guess?
Yeah, I think I see us as a business kind of sort of on this spectrum of, having a good product with a good idea to the final end of the spectrum being something that's made of some sort of waste product and then can kind of go fully into a circular economy. And so what we started with at one end of the spectrum was still using some fossil fuels in our product. Yep. Or sort of derived from fossil fuels, but it's not like we're putting straight petroleum in there.
No, it's a very, very small amount.
Yeah, haven't gone down to the local BP.
And
we're going to make another batch.
Exactly.
Big dredge out. Actually.
That's exactly right. And it was that mixed with plant-based products, so cornstarch.
Yeah.
And that was the first sort of iteration of our product. And that's sort of a lot of, I guess, compostable products kind of fall under that sort of kind of category or at that end of the spectrum. And then we've sort of been working along trying to get to the point where we're using, again, things that don't require intensive agriculture, so sort of more waste products and looking at using no sort of fossil fuel-based products. And we're getting very close. We're about to release 100% plant-based compostable products in the next sort of month or so. And then, following that, looking at what can we use in terms of waste materials, organic waste materials that don't require sort of any, again, intensive agriculture, the farming as inputs and using those to kind of create our products.
So it's almost like I'm going to play this back because I want to make sure I understand it, but you start with, hey, here's the organic material required to make this, and we're going to use people tend to forget that, CH4 and CH2 and various versions of carbon and hydrocarbons are actually organic materials, if I understand correctly. I'm not a chemist major, but so you start with, hey, we know how to make it now using those materials. Now we know how to make it using organic compostable versions of those materials, and now we're going to work out how to source those materials from places where they're already being outputted, and as opposed to just putting them back into the ground, we're going to use them to make a product that would otherwise be a non-compostable versions. That's sort of the continuum.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also looking at biopolymer manufacturing in Australia isn't something that's being done on a commercial scale that we've been aware of. We know there's Australian-owned companies that are manufacturing biopolymers or the resins that go into these products, but it's all done overseas. So we want to look at in the future, how can we work with manufacturers to do this in Australia using the best kind of input goods or feedstocks that don't require farming but are organic sort of waste materials. And that's sort of the journey, I guess, that we're on at the moment,
And you made I think I'm just going to pick up on some language there. You made a point about it not requiring farming to create the organic matter. And I'm thinking about what Brazil does with ethanols, right, where they grow a bunch of things to then turn it into an ethanol. And you're cool, but would be better if we managed to get that from something we were farming already. Is that the insight there, the That's what you were suggesting?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, even just looking at sort of things like soy-based ink to colour the products and every sort of input good that goes into our products, we're trying to avoid using any intensive farming. And, I think even sort of PLA, which is sort of the kind of a plant-based.
The Palestinian Liberation Army.
Yeah, that's exactly right. PLA, it's
you're going to have to refresh me on PLA in this context.
It's the plant-based resin that goes into into sort of compostable packaging. And, and in some cases, in some countries, that's being made from palm oil, which is obviously incredibly problematic. And so we're really obviously trying to avoid that. Even cornstarch is still problematic, GMO farming and things like that. So really, and even just like intense agriculture is obviously bad for the land, bad for ecosystems. So, I guess we're on a journey of trying to sort of solve those problems. And I mean, I guess what we're working on is incredibly exciting and we can't dive too much deeper into it.
No.
I guess that is the journey that we are on.
Yeah.
No, I love it. And look, I think the thing that I'm curious about is that it sounds like you're already, you've only been at this under 2 years, right? Is that right?
Like 18 months or something.
18 months? Yeah. It's a long way in 18 months, by the way.
It's been a big year and a half.
I mean, but look, part of me is curious about, one of my friends has a, and just forgive me for the parallel here, but she has a chili sauce company. Awesome chili sauce.
That's great.
But she started making it in her kitchen at home, and that was how she made the first 100 batches. Is that sort of how you uncovered that this thing might be possible? Like, was it? Is that?
It was
to a degree.
To a degree. Come on.
Yeah, we have played with resins in our kitchen just for a laugh.
Right, of course.
Literally yesterday.
Yeah, it is fun, but like it really started with I guess like conversation with sort of leading experts in the industry, from resin manufacturers to PhD alumni and things like this, and other packaging companies. Everyone was really generous with their time, information, and then
I think before we had all those conversations, we did come into this extremely green. So to even sit down and have those conversations and know what to ask was a lot of us sort of sitting on the internet.
Totally, yeah.
A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, that kind of.
Yeah, totally. We learned that really quickly, and even understanding bodies that certify compostability initially was like a new world for us. So
totally, yeah. And it's sort of, I guess, it's pretty cool to go from that to having a good understanding of what a compostable product is versus biodegradable in the terminology. Going from that to now, we can look at technical data sheets for certain types of resin and kind of know exactly what that will look and feel like once you put it through your extrusion line and things like this. So it's...
Hold on, what's an extrusion line? I mean... And once you pull it through the product.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and sort of,
I love Jay. I love it.
It's cool. And because I studied chemistry. I think I failed it actually at uni. I studied winemaking for about, 18 months. But I mean, I didn't even finish high school. I dropped out to go be a winemaker. And so my just chemistry knowledge is really just based on Google and YouTube. Right. And then from that to be able to get to these sort of this level of understanding crazy, blown extrusion line manufacturing processes and reading technical data sheets on biopolymer resin. I honestly, just being able to say that, I'm like, I can't believe I've gotten this far.
It's been a journey. It's been a real journey. So rapid.
Have you
learning curve.
Have you upskilled in that same respect, Julia? Like in terms of, have you had to get into the detail of some of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't drop out of high school, but I definitely dropped out of science in year 10. I was doing art and design stuff. Yeah. So
I was on a stage. I wasn't built for polymers.
It's been a lot, and look, Jordy has been fantastic at actually transferring this knowledge in a way that is easy to understand for a brain that is perhaps less
right brain or left brain,
I don't know.
One that is. I don't know which one that is.
But totally. So, and working in architecture and design, there's really no right answer. I mean, Whereas in this space, it's very rigid. So I've definitely, my skill set has...
Yeah, it's quite binary, isn't it? In terms of like the thing either does what it does, like it's either going to break down in 180 days without having to go to the tropics. I think your point before, it has to be under 30 degrees, right?
Yeah, so exactly.
You can't just take it to Darwin and go, well, it works. Totally fine.
Yeah.
Hey, so I want to come back to the 150,000 tonne problem, opportunity, whatever we want to frame that. I'm trying. That seems like that scale sounds huge. Is that do you go, we can work out how to plot from here to 150,000 tonnes, and is it a kind of a, build it all here, or is it open up the idea and the technology and the approach? Technology might not be the right word, so that the industry more broadly can adopt this. Like, how are you seeing making a massive dent on that number, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Very good.
I think we kind of definitely have these sort of conversations. And like I said, we're talking with massive companies within Australia, all of whom have approached us. They've come to us because during kind of COVID, I think a lot of large companies in Australia have kind of gone, well, how do we see ourselves on the other side of this? And do we see ourselves as a leader in sustainability and circular economy and things like this? And they've come to us. We've had some really good press, which is great. They've come to us and said, we love what you're doing. We can see that you're probably not ready for selling to us, but we, want to have these conversations now. And sort of talking with these companies, looking at bite-sized chunks within these companies, sort of maybe working within one state or with one distribution center. And I think that's kind of, I guess, how we see this working for us, is that we've completely bootstrapped this whole thing. We haven't taken any investment. We maybe will in 2021 as sort of things and some sort of developments for us kind of come out. But we
pros and cons, I assure you, having done 4 venture-funded businesses, I'd be like...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm increasingly becoming probably more skeptical of taking on investment. But, I think we kind of want to take this, I guess, bite-sized chunk approach and really only focus on Australia. I guess we're very Australian-centric with what we're doing, and also just trying to focus on specific industries and specific companies to work with and kind of grow that. And then over the next, 3 to 5 years, we really hope that plastic stretch wrap becomes kind of like using a plastic bag. It's extremely frowned upon, maybe even banned. It's that, and
go with regulation. That's the easiest way to scale a business.
Might come in from the back end. Start working.
Hold on, I want to come back to the Australia thing. Why? Like, I understand that that's a manageable thing to go after in the first instance, but is that why you're thinking let's focus on Australia?
I don't think so. I think maybe we want to narrow down on a market we understand really well and do it properly before.
Yeah, and I think also, like, the carbon footprint thing's a huge one for us. Like,
also,
stretch wrap way, imagine shipping 150,000 tons around the world. Like, that's a huge carbon footprint. So if we can kind of focus on Australia and then as we grow, manufacturing what we do and our resins abroad, and maybe like setting up a North America sort of satellite manufacturing process. And I think that's kind of our growth strategy with this over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have some working knowledge in terms of IP and patents and that type of thing. But is there some aspect of that you've got an underlying capability and technology, and you will put IP protection around that? Is that how that works? I'm assuming that works the same way in chemistry and molecular and biological products as it does in technical or physical products.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's sort of we're working on that already. And
pain in the butt.
It is.
I've been through the patent process a few times, and it's
pain. Just like.
It's interesting, though.
It's very interesting.
That's very positive of you.
Yeah.
I love this bureaucracy.
Yeah, I know. Regulation, patent protection.
Yeah, slow moving, like terrible sites to deal with. I mean, look, I'm in two minds about patents. I think in something like this is actually a really good use of patent and IP protection generally, but sometimes it can be counterproductive.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's sort of a sticky wicket, right? Because we almost want competition because we're trying to solve, we're not trying to make money, we're trying to solve a problem, right? So we want other people to join in this space. But a lot of the other sort of big plastic manufacturers in Australia and around the world don't have an interest in sort of biopolymers because they have so much sort of invested interest in plastics that compostable packaging, they'll spend a lot of money, I guess, trying to sort of push down that technology.
Discredited.
Yeah, I guess like the kind of oil tycoons.
Automakers.
Trying to sort of halt innovation in electric car manufacturing. So, I'm not sort of saying or pointing fingers like that, but
there's a conspiracy.
Yeah, exactly. 2020 is the year of conspiracies, right?
Just throw it into the mix. I've got one for you. Polymers.
Totally. We've got a couple of bot accounts where we just go around commenting on stuff.
Just change a few elections.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But I think so.
Yeah, look, I'd be surprised though, because I think you will find ultimately you don't need every company who is in this space to want to adopt it. You need one or two to say, we're going to go this way. And as soon as one of them wins even a remotely large account, like a Harris Farm in the grand scheme of retail, suddenly everyone's like, hold on, this is a problem, because what tends to happen is that the brand at the retail end will then be saying to their customers, we have this thing and we know it's important to you. And then the other brands will need to take notice, and then they'll be like, well, where are we getting this from and who's able to provide it? You tend to need nodes in these types of kind of things where things suddenly change, I find. How are you then, I guess, thinking about that? Because you want to manufacture it yourself, but a lot of the scale will come from taking companies that have an ability to manufacture and just saying, we can show you a better way to do this. Is it to build the entire thing yourself, or is it to license the technology? How are you thinking about actually getting some of that scale?
Yeah.
We're
still
discussion really.
It is. There's discussions that we've definitely had. And I think for us, we're really interested in solving the problem, the source of the problem, which is that resin. Right. And then, the actual manufacturing of the stretch wrap, there are, a few, there's probably sort of 2 or 3 people with that kind of machine in Australia. Right. Not many. I mean, those sort of machines have really kind of been, that kind of manufacturing has been taken obviously to Asia over the last sort of 30 years.
Interesting.
We know that there's same people with those types of machines across UK, EU, North America, probably more so than Australia. Actually, like far more so than Australia. Mm-hmm. So we don't see the need to go out and buy probably a $5 million stretch wrap making machine when
I'm sure that's got a special name, that machine too, by the way.
It's the old cast stretch film extrusion line or the blown film extrusion line.
You had an extrusion in there somewhere.
A couple extrusions, but my favourite actually term through this whole manufacturing process, which
Julia knows what's coming, by the way. It's clear that this one's
I love this is through sort of some research sort of discussions and development.
Should I guess what it is? No.
Yeah, what is it?
No.
It's bioreactor.
Yes.
I just love bioreactor. I love working with bioreactors, and to say that we're working with companies and sort of developing technology around bioreactors.
What is a bioreactor?
It's just like a fermentation device, right? So
it's a reactive agent or something inside the process of doing something biological or bioreactor.
Yeah, exactly. And converting product A to product B through fermentation. And I mean, I'm just totally dumbing down like incredibly
complex chemistry.
But it's really, really fun, and seeing them in action and stuff, it's super cool. I never thought I'd get to the point where I'd be looking at stretch film machines on YouTube and bioreactors on, this is early on. I was just like, oh, this is so fascinating.
That's super cool. There's a whole meta in there about the accessibility of information that makes something like this possible. Because by the sound of it, what you were saying earlier, a lot of what you're doing here is not trying to invent the science, but pull together parts of the science and then convince people to come on that journey.
Definitely. That's sort of what we're just getting all the right people in the same room to have the conversation to make it happen. Because obviously our skill set is not, we're not chemical engineers, but we're trying to go out and find the best chemical engineer to do what we need. And that's been I think the greatest part about Great Wrap really is just like seeing those relationships sort of start to connect and what can come from that. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
And do you, I'm curious as to, I mean, I'm sure there's a bio industry. I'm not sure of the right word, but these. How did you? What was required for you to bring them together? Like, why did it need for you guys to be the catalyst on this? It's because like everyone was happy doing what they were doing and they weren't really talking. Or
it seems
I guess how did that opportunity come about?
Yeah, it definitely feels like that, right?
Yeah, I think there's.
You just gave them all wine. There's a wine in there somewhere, right?
Basically, a lot of wine. Seems like everyone was doing their own thing. Like I think maybe it's an industry that's been around for so long and there hasn't been any competition or threat. And so without that, I guess people just keep doing what they're doing and maybe took a new perspective, I think, and like one from outside your industry. I know when, I'm working on something that I've been looking at for 2 weeks, you step away and come back and there's something like glaringly obvious. So maybe it's sort of something like that.
That at a macro level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's like biopolymers or bioplastics as such it's a real sort of small, I mean, it's growing, I think it's exploding, like it's hockey stick type growth. But it's still, I think in 2018 we used around 1,000 tons of bioplastics or compostable plastics in Australia versus, I mean, I can't remember how.
150,000 is only the stretch part, right?
Yeah,
so there's like a multiplier.
Totally. And so it's a really small part of the sort of plastic industry.
Yeah.
And it's been, I mean, there's been so much study and research. We've read science journals dating back to 1996 on sort of processes that are kind of not so commonly used and really innovative now. So it's like there's been so much sort of research and proven technology in this space, but it's then kind of these incredible sort of scientists and chemical engineers who are sometimes maybe pretty bad at business or, sort of linking that to finding, someone who's interested in bioplastics, then who can create a good brand to sell a great product. And I think we probably led with being just a brand, first foot forward with a brand. And then now we're really trying to learn other aspects of the industry and bring people together to create, I guess, a full sort of, cycle process.
Full loop. And so I think you mentioned this earlier. I just want to make sure I understood it though. The part of the value chain that you almost need to insert yourselves into is the bit where you create the organic material that then goes into the machine, right? There's 3 machines that actually make the thing. Whatever you put into them, as long as it's designed to be made into the thing, it'll work. You just need to put it into the vat somewhere, I'm presuming. And so your job is to say, these guys and girls have worked out this thing over here, but no one's making this in a wholesale capacity to then give to the plastic maker or to then make, great wrap the way that they're going to make it. And then do you see yourselves ultimately being like going to them and them making it, but you taking it out to market? Or is it a thing where you actually potentially could just be the supplier of that raw material and then let these manufacturers do what they're doing?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because we've got some really cool advisors or mentors around us.
Yeah.
And some would say, listen, just license out your patent protected process to make this, resin and go sit on a beach and just relax because you can honestly retire.
It's never quite that simple, but true.
And we're, but I think we're just like way too, ambitious. We want to be involved in every step of all of this, as heavily involved in making something in terms of sort of this resin formula and working with that team and then working with the manufacturers to make it and then creating this great brand and distribution model and all of that. Like that's, I guess, we're trying to go big on this,
Yeah. And I mean, it's half the fun with a lot of these things, right? Like if someone listening goes to the website, it for all intents and purposes will look like you can just buy a replacement to the cling wrap, saran wrap, insert brand name here for your kitchen, for your household use. And I think it's less obvious that there is actually the big lever here and the bigger vision here is the other 97% or whatever the number was of stuff that's being used that you probably don't even see as a retail person. I guess the reason I bring that up is that so often when we think about change, we tend to think about the thing that's in front of us. Like if I go to the supermarket and I see the banana wrapped in Glad Wrap or whatever, then I feel bad about it, but I don't realize that the entire pallet of bananas that arrived had 40,000 times that amount on the back end, and then to approach reshaping that system or rethinking that system to say what's wrong with the value chain. Well, the value chain is the input materials used here are never going to be biodegradable because they're not biodegradable themselves or whatever. So we have to re-engineer that post. I found that absolutely fascinating. And then you talked before about like creating a brand. Like, what role does the brand play? I mean, if ultimately 97% of it or whatever the number is not visible to the customer, what's the role of the brand in this?
Yeah, I think it is about communicating that to the customer, and
right.
And it seems that everyone we've had this discussion about pallet wrap with it has the same reaction as you, goes, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that. And
right.
So the brand has the voice to like raise the issue and tell people about what is actually going on, making you realize that everything you buy comes wrapped in plastic, even
right.
if and I think that's been sort of like the way we've tried to use it as a tool to communicate that bigger problem, because it is about knowing that it's there before you can change it, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, part of me feels like there's a grassroots thing here where you sell the retail product to the consumer and say, by the way, here's the action you can take. So the real source of this problem, which is the supermarket you go into, the clothes chain that you visit, whatever the other 2 or 3 places are that are the big things you interact with but don't actually see the product, and have customers say, what are you using when your pallets come in? Because if it's not this, like, I'd prefer not to shop here because you can solve this problem. You're just choosing not to, or you're not engaging in the issue. Is that how some of that brand stuff might play out, do you think? Or?
Yeah, I think so.
Definitely.
I think, like bringing Great Wrap into people's homes means that it's in your pantry.
Right.
It's something that you see maybe on a daily basis or a weekly basis, depending on how much you like to cook. Yep. But essentially, if you can bring Great Wrap into people's homes and they're using it on a somewhat regular basis, it's on their mind. So that, when they do see pallet wrap or we're working with a business or whatever, that they can sort of start to engage with that as well and say, oh, you should be using this. I use it at home.
Yeah. It's also like I use it at home and I haven't changed the way I'm doing things. Like, so why haven't you,
right.
it's, you still act the way you would if you were using Glad Wrap. So you understand at a very sort of like hands-on level that you don't
right.
need to be making any sort of like vast changes to the amount of time you're putting in or anything like that. I think that's the power of the home product. Yeah,
there's a visceral kind of – I've got this imagination of you sending it to the house of the companies of the people that you want to have critical conversations with, the head of distribution for insert brand name here, and just go and give don't freak them out.
We sound your address.
Just leave a Great Wrap in there. in the letterbox and say, we thought you might be interested in this product. By the way, we have a pallet version of this. Will cost the same amount of money or thereabouts and solve this problem for you. Use it in your home and find out. Is it cost competitive to the more traditional plasticky horrible version?
The first iteration was not. It was about twice the price. Second iteration is coming out shortly. Is almost the same price,
right?
As plastic pallet wrap or plastic cling wrap.
Yep.
And stretch wrap, exactly, more broadly speaking. And then by the end of 2021, our goal would be to be making it the same price as plastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I'm guessing is largely driven by scale.
Yeah, correct. I guess scale and input goods.
Right. If you can get a product that's going to sit on someone's farm, like banana peel, or what might be the organic product, by the way, if you can do it.
I guess we know. Yeah.
Just give me a rough. Is it like stock feed kind of thing, or is it organic material like fruit and vegetables? Like roughly,
in Australia, right? You've seen energy being made from sugarcane waste. You've seen in Australia we have about 2.5 million tons of primary production food waste every year, right? So there's in those sort of primary production food bases, you've got great sort of properties needed to make bioplastics or even energy and other things. So there's so many forms of sort of agriculture and food waste that you can look at to kind of solve this problem. There's outside of that, there's some really cool things as well that you can look at for sort of driving energy and what we need to create bioplastics. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to use like some crazy imagination. We're not sort of I don't know, extracting something from somewhere crazy.
No kind of real alchemy going on. No. It's just like, dude, it's basic chemistry. I can explain it to you.
It's quite straightforward, but it's there's some really, I guess, interesting stuff being done and has been done for the past sort of 20 years in what we're sort of doing. And I guess it's about diving deeper into some sort of science publications, and what you find is astounding. And you go, how is no one doing this on a commercial scale?
Right.
And I guess, it's just sort of now because of the need, like the Scott Morrison, the Australian government announced this $1 billion package to, I guess, mitigate or completely shut down the amount of waste we're sending overseas back to China, which was in the hundreds of thousands of tons each year, because of our sort of recycling and landfill capabilities are pretty limited here. So, there's like so much sort of innovation being kind of funded by the government now to really solve these problems, which 10 years ago, it doesn't matter if it's a left or a right, government. It just wasn't that important. Yeah.
Right. And just on that, or following that line of thought, how did you guys arrive at doing this? You came out of wine. There was a winery in there somewhere. I'm sure that was in the story somewhere. But how did you, how did it come to mind? But then how did you think we're in a position to tackle this, given your backgrounds specifically, or not?
I guess we were in the winery when we saw the problem, or both discussed a frustration in the problem. I think, it was both a part of what we did, like being on site and having spent, months choosing the most sustainable sort of like
plastic.
No, material to build with.
Generally,
had, the smallest embodied carbon sort of footprint and things like that. And then watching it get to site wrapped in plastic is very disheartening. I mean, you really get frustrated. And then I think we knew we wanted to solve a problem together. And it was just about finding where we had enough passion basically, and our sort of backgrounds intersected, and it came to this. And then we just really started researching, and that's how it happened, I think.
I find it fascinating that, for sure, a lot of, the great problems have involved someone having a kind of a personal experience with the problem, right? And so that bit makes sense. The bit that I'm sort of curious about, or maybe battling is even the right word with, is at what point did you think, despite the fact that neither of us are really that strong in what we believe will be a chemistry-led problem, we think we can solve this problem and we have any idea where to start, or that didn't matter? Like, that bit's fascinating to me. Can we understand that a bit?
Yeah, I think, just being so naive about this was just insanely beautiful, because it's, like, had we known
how deep we would go.
We've known what a pain in the ass.
It was kind of like, this is great. We've got this cool idea. Let's just go do it, right? I mean, you hear that story, like when someone's, I don't know, an accountant, that they go start a skincare label or whatever it is, and there's over and over, you hear these kind of stories, and I think it is that like element of just being so naive, but just really driven, I guess, by the problem and the sort of size of the problem or opportunity, as you said. And I think that was just so exciting that you kind of just keep going deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And if you think 2 years ago, just how much work we've sort of put into this. Yeah, I don't know. I probably would have maybe chosen another thing that was a bit easier.
No, and I don't think so. I think also once we started having conversations with people around us and like people in our industries that were also as frustrated but had never interrogated it deeply enough to want to do something, I think that became really exciting. Like when we realized that this was like a thing that people cared about, I think that was also
and probably infectious.
Yeah, totally.
I'm guessing.
100%. Yeah. It is now, I think, even more so. Like, I think we love, this space so much now, and it just like it's addictive and just. I mean, it's like when you're kind of coming up with anything, but it is these every conversation we have now, we leave just feeling so motivated and energized because it's not like we're curing cancer, but it feels as important to us right now.
Yeah.
We're just so driven in this, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I've spent 20 years in tech, and my parents, who are both doctors, have always been like, we don't really know what our son does. I'm like, come on, I'm just making stuff. And then if I flip that back on them, I'm like, I have no idea how you guys do what you do. My mum's a psychiatrist. My dad used to run an emergency department. And I look at that and go, I could never do that. But in some respects, that's a false truth that we tell ourselves, which is, well, that thing is impossible. I couldn't possibly do that thing. You're like, well, some other human worked it out. You're a human, aren't you? Most of your neurons are firing in the right direction. Like, if it's important to you, you work it out. Like, did you sort of never have that thought or doubt, or did you just go, well, we're not really wired that way? The winery came about because we decided to open a winery. We didn't know anything about that I don't know whether you did or not, but you obviously went to study winery. Like, it still feels to me like you just made a decision to go and do something and said, bugger the consequences. Is that sort of the attitude in there?
So.
Yeah, big time.
Sure.
I started making wine when I started working in a vineyard. I grew up in a wine region, just had a job on the weekends.
Right. You were going to tell us how young you were when you were making wine. I want to actually know that number.
Well, I was 17 when I dropped out of high school, and I ended up moving to Margaret River, and then I moved to Europe, and I just worked on vineyards, and it was this at 17, I was like, I'm going to be a winemaker. This is good. I didn't really know anything about it. Just from the people I sort of worked with a bit on school holidays, but like 10 years later, I had my own label, and it was going really good. And I sort of, put it on hold to focus on this with Julia. But it's like, I think after 10 years of just like continuously just sort of working at it, I was so proud of the wines that, I've made over the last few years with the help of a lot of people. And I feel like, 10 years from now, I know we'll just feel the exact same way about what we're doing with Grape Wrap. And it was that same level of just being so naive, not knowing what you're doing, but just jumping in. And, I already feel like that now.
Yeah. Yeah, the universe in some respects conspires to help you when you sort of go out and do these things. Just one thought, though, as well. It sounded like the act of making wine requires, a bunch of experimentation kind of and inputs as well, and the inputs have a massive impact on the quality of the output, or even the fact whether the output even happens at all. But that is also quite a collaborative thing. You tend to think of my naiveness around winemaking. You tend to think, well, the winemaker made the wine. I'm not sure, but there's a cast of people who have a role to play in that, and a lot of what the winemaker's doing is understanding how the interplay of those things. Is there some parallel in that, do you think, with what you're doing?
Totally. Yeah, because when you make wine, it's about agriculture, it's about farming, it's about the soil web, it's about I was farming organically and adapting some biodynamic techniques as well. Then it was about managing a business. Then it was fermentation and chemistry, and then it was packaging and marketing, and there was so many different things. And I was I had people work for me on and off over the years, but like most of the time it was sort of just me. And you kind of have to be across all of it, and all of it is equally as fascinating. And I think, I feel the exact same way about this as well. Yeah.
It's an amazing attitude. I love it. And then probably as a kind of closing question, like from where you guys are standing now, well, like what do you think is the one big enabler for you? And the reason I sort of ask the question is often, the people who are listening to this might actually have a way to help with that. Like what's the one big lever from where you are right now to get you to the next kind of big milestone that's important for you guys?
What do you think?
This is a hard question.
Thought I'd end with the hardest question I have.
At the moment, I think being in Melbourne and being unable to be manufacturing, experimenting, primarily that's like the biggest front of mind issue, just because we've got a lot of things that we're like itching to try out and can't get to. But I think, what do you think?
Totally. I think like a community and an ecosystem that kind of supports this is what we're really lacking. I think we launched our product in March 2020, and we're coming out of, I know, right? And we're coming out of this weekend is the sort of the end of one of the most heaviest sort of restrictions in the world. So I think, by the time a cafe actually opens, it'll be 3-4 months of what we've sort of been in, plus the first lockdown as well. So I think we're craving meeting people, just sort of, I guess, mentors in the sort of startup space, people that have experience in sort of biotech space, people who are, we've been talking with heaps of different investors and impact investment funds and stuff like that. And that's been really cool. And we're talking with distributors and big companies, but I think we just crave being around. Like, I think because I've worked in the vineyard, Julie works in a massive office, so she doesn't really miss the office too much, but I'm like, I can't wait to get into it.
Hold on. That was not an agreement.
I miss talking about architecture so much.
Yeah, true. But I think just...
It's not all polymers.
I know. No, but I definitely think a community of people excited about what we're excited about. Because Jordy and I, we love each other a lot, but we will be really looking forward to having people
just saying
that are really interested in that sounds bad, but are interested in what we're doing and are doing interesting things themselves.
Yeah. And I think, people that are connected and can help us connect and kind of grow our network and help us grow. I think, we sort of have reached out to a couple people just in terms of like proper mentors or mentorship. And, I think that's what we're really looking for, is probably some sort of like mentorship program or just sort of guidance and direction.
Yeah, direction. Yeah. Do these things in this order.
Yeah. And
I mean, it is a machine, ultimately. A lot of getting something to market in whatever capacity is understanding, well, how do you solve the 3 or 4 major problems, something that customers want, the manufacture of that thing and the distribution of that thing and the service of the customers, and then how do you build demand or desire for the product, or at least tap into demand that's already there. So it's definitely a playbook that you can run.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I think to sort of find those sort of people that we're really excited about over the coming months as, I guess, things sort of open up and whatnot.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for telling us a bit about Great Wrap. For people listening, please go and check it out, both the website and the product as well. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank
you so much for having us.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Shape the System. As usual, if you'd like to suggest a guest, someone that you know who's helped change a system for the better, please go to www.shapethesystem.org, click on the top right-hand corner, then click Suggest Guest. Make sure that you click subscribe so that you get the new episode. Shape the System is an independent podcast with support from KPMG High Growth Ventures. Connects founders to the services they need along their journey. Whether you are looking to refine your strategy, mature your finance function, prepare for a capital raise, expand abroad, or simply comply with regulatory requirements, they provide you with the support you need to drive your business forward.